Andre Dirrell, who fights Carl Froch at the weekend, has boxed here before. He boxed here twice a couple of years ago, international matches, England against America. Now, the second match was against Paul Smith, who at the end of this month fights for the vacant, sorry, not for the vacant, fights for the British super middleweight title against Tony Quigley in an all-Scouse extravaganza at the Liverpool Arena. But I'm joined now by a guy from, well, he's born in Sidcup, but he's based on the Isle of Dogs. He's a pro now, and he boxed Andre Dirrell on the same tournament. Lost on points. Name's Sam Webb, and he's on the line now. Sam, you there, mate?
How you doing, Steve? You all right?
Yeah, fantastic, Sam. Thanks for joining us tonight. Sam, now, I was at the Hilton, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember much of the night. I just remember him being a little bit fast, a bit elusive, and just beating you to the punch. Is that a fair assessment of what Dirrell does, or is he better than that, Sam?
To be honest, I mean, on the night we didn't know nothing about him. You know, he's a typical American. Though he's definitely a talented kid, but
Yep.
I don't know how it's going to go with Cole. I mean, Cole's a top-class fighter himself, and I think he's proven himself, whereas I don't know if Dirrell really has. You know, he's beat some good kids, but at the same time, he's never beaten anyone in Cole's class. So I think he is a good kid, and he's probably the best kid I boxed as an amateur, to be fair.
Oh, you think now? Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it was either him or Paul Smith, like, you know. But Paul was more, he seemed more tough, whereas Dirrell was slick and clever, like, you know, very, very sharp.
And of course, the thing with Dirrell is he's talking, I mean, like all Americans, talking a good fight, but what he's saying is, listen, I know Carl Froch is a world champion, blah, 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 but I had 236 fights as an amateur. I've got an Olympic bronze medal. I boxed here in England before. The English fans love me. Can you remember anything about him? Did you talk to him afterwards?
We didn't really speak too much, to be honest, afterwards. I mean, I was a bit too upset to even acknowledge the geezer, to be fair. But
Sure.
I mean, he seemed like a nice enough bloke, you know, as nice as he could be, I suppose, beforehand. But he's the typical American. No one down his mouth off and telling him what he's going to do. But like Cole said in his interview last week, I mean, talk's cheap, and
yeah, talk is
you really
cheap.
have got to back it up. And you know, if you shut your mouth off and you know you get a good idea when you get in there, you look like a right fool. So. You know, I don't think he will, to be honest. I think he's going to be tricky for a few rounds. Where
Yeah, I
he's
do
so sharp,
too.
but
Yeah.
he's a very, very good kid, don't get me wrong, you know. He's a talented kid, and I think Cole will struggle with his speed a little bit, but as soon as he starts to feel out hard cold punches, from what everybody tells us, I mean, I've been sparring Darren Barker quite a bit, and
Darren sparred him a lot in the year.
He said he's never sparred anyone like him, so, you know, that in itself just... You know, it speaks for itself.
Yeah,
really.
I think what happens with Carl, because people look at him and he's a bit rangy and he's smiley, they sort of neglect one thing, that he really bangs. I mean, I had Darren on this show in the summer and he just finished sparring with him and he said he bangs really hard, Steve, harder than you think. That seems to be the case. Now, so what are you up to now, mate? You're boxing next week in Bolton, aren't you? Is that still on?
Yeah, that's it. I've got a French kid. We're not too sure what he's done. Or
yeah.
I think he's had 21 wins, 6 losses. But
not too bad then.
No. I mean, you know, hopefully it's a warm-up. I mean, I boxed and beat Thomas McDonough in an eliminator, so it's a case of just sitting patient now and seeing what's happening with Smalley, I think. But I know he's.
Well, so I think I think Anthony Small is going to probably vacate, but you'll also be on that. That's on the undercard of the Ryan Rhodes, Jamie Moore, the light middleweight, the European thing.
That's it,
and they're
yeah,
both old. You know, no disrespects to them. I know you're what, 28, but you're a young 28. Those guys, I mean, they're seasoned. They've had a right hard old life. Those two, really.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like Ryan Rhodes and Jamie have been around for years, you know. I remember when I was coming through the amateurs watching them and thinking, Jesus, if I could be like that, like, you know.
Well,
Ryan, now they're in the boxing each other for the European title. I mean, it's
Ryan won the British title 11 years, you know, won it, and then he won it again 11 years later. So they have been around a long while. They've served proper old school apprentices, and that's next week. That's on Sky. Listen, Sam, thanks very much for joining us. Just one tip. Just give us your tip for the weekend. Then, if you had to put a tenner, I mean, I'm not meant to advocate gambling on it, but if you had to spend a tenner, which is about the price of 2 beers in London these days, who would you put your tenner on? On 2 o'clock in the morning. You can, of course, you can watch it on prime time.
To be honest, I think Dirrell could win a 12-round point decision. Yeah. But he'll nick the first sort of 6-7 rounds and lose the last few.
And have to hold on.
If not, I think Cole's going to stop him early on.
I'll tell you what, that first scenario you painted there is one I was talking about earlier on, when I was talking to some people, and I could see Dirrell pulling away 5 or 6 rounds, then Carl pulling it back, maybe leaving it too late, because all Dirrell's got to do in that last 6 rounds is win 1 or 2 of the rounds, and he wins a tight decision. It's interesting. Sam Webb, thanks for taking time this evening to speak to us. Sam Webb, he's young prospect from East London. He's had 15 fights, only lost once. That was early in his career. He's turned it round, treading water, waiting for a British title fight, possibly an all South London or near enough South London. They used to box each other in the South East. Sam Webb and Anthony Small. That could happen somewhere down the line.